Welcome to Healing from Grief and Loss, where top experts guide you on your journey to find strength, comfort, and joy again. I'm Andrea, your host, and on today's show, my guest expert is the lovely and talented Lisa K Boehm. Welcome, Lisa. I'm so happy to have you with us.
Thank you so much for having me today.
So Lisa is, she's an author, she's a speaker, and she also is a grief guide for bereaved mothers. And I know, Lisa, you are such an inspiration to so many people, including myself. And is it possible for you to share a bit of your story with us today?
Absolutely. 4.5 years ago, my 17-year-old daughter left the house to run some errands on a regular night in December of 2015, and she never came home again. Instead, we got the knock on the door that every parent is afraid of getting, and there was a police officer and the coroner, and told us to sit down, just like what you see on TV. And even though my daughter still wasn't home, I never would have guessed in a million years that they would have said that Katie had been involved in a fatal car accident and would never come home again. And as you can imagine, it was beyond devastating. And I just pulled my husband and my son close, and I thought, we have got to find a way to survive this. And step by step, breath by breath, we managed to find our way, and we are still finding our way. Anyone that has suffered a loss and is coping with grief knows that it's a lifetime journey. And at about the 2-year mark, I really started digging back in my journals and assessing what I had done, because everything had been such a blur up to that point. And I discovered in my journaling that I had done a lot of healing. And I wanted to share some of those ideas with other moms. And I started to write a book, which was published in 2019.
Yes, I was actually wondering what made you want to become an author. So clearly, through such a painful time, I'm sorry for your loss, and it must have been such a hard time for you and your son and your husband. So what's it like just living day to day as a mother that lost her daughter?
Well, it's honestly like going on a Six Flags roller coaster ride. Some days you are screaming and crying and you want the damn thing to stop. You feel nauseous. You don't know how you're going to survive the ride. And then other days, now that we are a little further on our journey, I feel like some days I'm on the kiddie roller coaster. So I'm still going up and down and loop-de-loop, but it's not that crazy intensity. And I always reflect back to the fact that we have survived 4.5 years, and we've survived that Six Flags roller coaster. And I have that knowledge that we do know how to survive, but it really is a journey that you just really learn to live with. There's no getting around it, no getting over it, no putting it to the side, no ignoring it. It's learning how to build your life around your grief again.
Right. So what could you say to someone that is possibly going through it right now? Like what is something that you could share that if you can look back at when you got the knock on the door and how you were feeling, what could you say to someone right now if they're going through a recent loss of a child?
You know, I think one of the most powerful things that someone said to me as another mom who had lost a child was simply that you will survive. Now, keep in mind, if you have not lost a child, those words don't have the same meaning. And I don't mean any disrespect to anybody else. I know we all have struggles in life. But unless you've walked the walk, it doesn't mean the same. But when another mom who was about 10 years down the road, she, gave me a hug, held both of my hands, and she said, "Lisa, I know it seems impossible, but you will survive." That was powerful because I looked at her as a bit of a mentor and I thought, okay, I'm trusting you because you are doing this. But I would say beyond that, there comes a time when we have to start helping ourselves. And I guess I have two pieces of advice around that. And one is find your why. Why, what is going to keep you going? For me, I had a 15-year-old son at home who still needed a mom, who still deserved a mom. And not only a mom, but a plugged in as possible, somebody who was there to help him through his grief and school and teenage land and all the struggles that it brings. So I put my feet on the ground every single day, probably for about 2.5 years for my son specifically. And as much as my grief is always here, always, I was able to temporarily take it and just put it over here while I tried my best to be his mom. And, still had rules and boundaries and abundance of love and help. And the other thing, I guess, is, in terms of helping ourselves, is that we really need to take care of ourselves. As moms, doesn't matter what's going on in our lives, we try and take care of everybody else and everything else before ourselves. But we know that we can't pour from an empty cup. So for me, that was walking. It was journaling. It was reaching out to other moms. And reaching out to other moms was probably the most helpful thing that I did for my heart.
Right. So how are today, how are your husband and your son dealing with things? How are they at this point in time?
After Katie died, I would say that the three of us went in three very different directions. I used to sort of joke that I was in right field, my husband was in the stands, and my son had left the stadium. We all coped completely different. And I can laugh about that now, but it put my marriage to the test. My son is doing great now. We are stronger and tighter and closer than ever, the three of us. But we struggled. And I didn't know if we were going to make it. But it was just really, it sounds cliche, but it was really love, understanding, and patience, and just understanding that we all do grieve differently, but that we could get through this if we stuck together.
Right. That's beautiful. I lost you for a minute. You're back. Yeah. So looking back, is there anything you would have done differently or wished you had known back then?
That's a really good question that no one has ever asked me. I think we all do grief the best way we can.
Yeah.
And there's no right or wrong. And I think grief manifests itself so many different ways that what might be right for me and my family might be completely not right for another family. So it's really hard to say all you have to do is do this and this and this. But I do think there is value in talking and sharing with moms who've lost children, because there's so much to glean from their experience.
Right. So where does your joy come from now? Where are you finding the most joy in your life?
Well, my son is now 20, and he is just at that wonderful age where he is just stepping off into adult life, and he's completed his education, and he is now looking forward to starting an apprenticeship. And it brings our hearts so much joy to see him thriving. Yes. And to see him living. And considering where we all could be, it just really fills my heart that he is really living a happy and fulfilled life.
That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. Now, I do want to have you talk a little bit about your book. So before we go, is there anything else that you feel my audience needs to know, or so there's just a little bit that you can share about your book that I can't wait to get for myself?
Well, this is just repeating really what I've said, but I would really encourage any moms who are listening to reach out, because grief and child loss is probably the most lonely and isolating place to be. Even though in your head other people are going through this or have gone through this, in the moment you really feel like nobody else understands. And when you connect with other moms, they get it. You just know that they get it. So that would be my biggest recommendation. As I mentioned, I wrote this book called Journey to Healing, and it's called A Mother's Guide to Navigating Child Loss. And it really shares what has helped me and what has helped other moms. I spend a lot of time interviewing other moms and getting their quotes, their experiences, their ideas, and I wove them into the book. So it's not just my story, because really when somebody picks up a self-help book, they don't want to read about my story. They want something that's going to help them. So my daughter is woven through this, but only in a way that will maybe help people connect. But there are over 101 different little tips and strategies that moms can implement to take those baby steps forward. And there's also a Q&A section at the back. So if a group of moms or church group or so on would like to do a book study or a book club discussion group on it, it's right there in the back as well. There's also a handy resource at the back, and I've actually most positive feedback on that It's at the very, very back, and it's called For the Supporters. Because even before we lost Katie, I had no idea. I was that person that didn't know what to say or do, or said the wrong thing. So I really made an easy, breakdown of things that people can do for their loved ones or their friends if and when they find themselves supporting somebody who's lost a child.
Wonderful. So we will put up a link to your book at the end of the video. There'll be a link that people can go on and see what they need to do to get your book. That would be awesome.
Sure, and I also have a free resource. It's a 1-hour video that's free of charge that anyone can download, but it is specific to moms who've lost a child, and it's called Understanding Grief. Because like I said, it is a different world altogether. And I go through some of the common questions that moms have, common concerns, problems, irritations that we have with other people, our marriage. And there's a link that goes with that as well that hopefully people will find helpful.
Okay, that's awesome. Thank you so much. Well, Lisa, thank you. I can't thank you enough. I mean, I'm so grateful to have you as one of our guest experts, and I just thank you from the bottom of my heart for sharing your story and being with us today. And I know I'm looking forward to your book, so I can't wait. But yes, thank you for sharing today.
Thank you so much for having me and for sharing all about grief. I think it is something that we do need to talk about more.
Yes, we do. Absolutely. And thank you to my audience for tuning in today. I'm sure something has touched your soul. I know mine has been touched. It always is with Lisa. So until the next time, be safe and just be kind to yourself. And just remember that you're not alone. Take care. Bye for now.
Absolutely.